Okay, we are going to get started. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It is 12:01, so I want to respect all of your time. This is our first webinar for applicants that's called Tell Me More About the Yass Prize. For those of you who I have not met, my name is Caroline Allen, and I am proud to be the Vice President of the Yass Prize. I want to thank in advance my colleague Josefina Rago, who helped me put this together. And she will be helping with the tech and some questions as well when we get to the end. Uh, as I mentioned, we are in our third year of launching the Yass Prize, meaning that this is the third application cycle. We were so impressed and thrilled and honored to celebrate our first two cohorts of awardees, and we are excited to shine an even brighter light on this newest cohort that we're going to be uncovering this year. And so I hope that many of you are excited to learn more about the Yass Prize, really think through your eligibility and whether you're a good fit, and then just get a little bit more insider knowledge in terms of the application. I do also have two special guests with me, Rob Levins. We actually are just coming off of his road show visit. So I was just in Missouri 2 days ago, and it was such a remarkable visit. So we'll definitely share more about that when we get to Rob. And we have Dr. Troy Monroe with us from Jamoki Academy in Connecticut. And so I'm going to share a little bit, and then we'll get to them, which are our real VIPs of today. So just a quick overview. We're going to be with each other for about 45 minutes. I'm going to talk about the founding and the launch of the Yass Prize, our STOP principles, which often a lot of people have questions about, the application timeline. Then I'll be interviewing and asking some questions of our alumni, Rob and Dr. Monroe, and then we'll be taking some question and answer from the audience. So sit back, enjoy, and here we go. So starting at the very beginning, the Yass Prize was initially created as a way to combat what we are seeing with COVID. We know that during COVID, many schools around our country were closing down and shutting down and not serving students in the way that students may have needed. But we also know that there were many heroes that were in our classrooms, in our schools, that were opening up or were doing transformative things for kids. And so an award that started really because of COVID now has led to something much bigger, has led to a innovative movement that brings together leaders from all different sectors within the education movement, whether that's private, public, charter, homeschool, ed tech, microschool, you name it, we have them in our cohort. And it's really bringing together this group in order to fuel them and help them scale and help them develop to reach even more kids and be even more transformative. So you'll notice in our application, there's not many questions about COVID, even though that's where the prize originally stemmed from. The Yass Prize is more than just a grant. It is more than just the money, and it is more than just one application. By applying, you are entering a community of innovators, of disruptors, of leaders who, no matter where they are in the country, are doing two things. Well, they're doing more than two things, but they're focusing on kids at the forefront of all decisions. And they are doing something that is truly unique and different from many other schools out there. And I'll get a little bit more into the STOP principles soon. But these are four parts of the Yass Prize that again make us different, that make this movement so much more substantive than maybe some other opportunities you've been a part of. One is the accelerator. We don't want to just give our alumni money. We want to provide them with speakers and experiences and content that really allows them to learn from one another as a cohort, as well as learn from experts in the room. So we bring together the best of finance, business, journalism, media, you name it, we have that speaker. And this year will be in Miami right after Thanksgiving. And it's an opportunity to stop, to pause, to reflect, and to truly think about where your organization is headed next. I remember Lakeisha Young from Oakland Reach, one of our first cohort members, said that that week experience at the Yass Prize Accelerator completely changed the trajectory because for the first time, she paused and stopped and really thought about where she wants to head her organization next in terms of a strategic vision. And building on the support from the Yass Prize and the collaboration with the other team members, she's now accomplishing amazing things in California. Second is this alumni community and collaborations. We individually that first year awarded 20 individual organizations, and we were really excited about that. But what we did not realize is all of those alumni are collaborating and learning and building on one another. So yesterday, when we went to Oakmont Education in Ohio, who is redefining what dropout recovery education looks like, they are partnering with another one of our awardees, Rapunzel, who does a financial literacy curriculum and gets kids to invest and learn about the stock market and learn how to use their money or spend their money or think about business in a completely different way. And so here we are at Oakmont, visiting Oakmont, and they're learning from one of our other awardees, Rapunzel. Or I know that Rob is going to visit Oakmont and they're going to visit Rob in Missouri to build on their hydroponics program. Rob has this amazing part of his museum where they're growing lettuce and other plants. And we saw kids the other day packing up the lettuce to give to homeless shelters. And so Oakmont Education is really excited to build on that and have a hydroponics program, which I'm sure Rob will tell you about more soon. So it's really about joining a community that, again, puts kids first and where you can learn from one another. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If someone in our community is already doing something really well, you can steal and borrow. And our alumni community is so happy to have those collaborations. And then the last two opportunities are more related to external opportunities. So for our media partner is Forbes, and Forbes has a lot of summits. For those who are our top 64 this year, you'll be invited to Cleveland in October as part of the Under 30 Summit. If you're not under 30, which I'm not either, you're still welcome. But it's just called the Under 30 Summit, recognizing those under 30 list leaders. However, we're going to be also having a Yass Prize Education Conference at the same time in Cleveland. So it's building on going to the best of the Forbes event and then also having our Yass Prize event. And then there's also political and innovation opportunities. Our awardees came to DC for 2 days in February and January, and they met with Governor Stint. They met with Governor Reynolds of Iowa. They met with the governor of Georgia, and they had like a closed private meeting talking about what they're doing to the point where Governor Reynolds in Iowa was like, I want you to come to my state. Like, we don't have anything like this in our state. And so it's a really big opportunity for our alumni to, again, scale, impact more communities and teach other states what they're doing really well. In addition, we just had a group that convened in Oklahoma with Governor Stint, and he brought together a bunch of legislators and really was thinking about how can the Yass Prize awardees have an impact in Oklahoma. And so people like want our alumni because we're shining a light on them because they're so incredible, and therefore they're getting a ton of recognition, and people want them in their communities. So now I'm going to dive into the 4 STOP principles because this is a big part of the application. There's one short answer question about each of these. And sometimes, even though we try to make it really explicit, sometimes there are some questions about them. So I just want to take a little bit to dive in. So the first core is sustainability, and that really holds up the rest. And what we mean by that is a provider is able to exist without continual philanthropy by utilizing public dollars that fund entities where students are learning, or you're taking significant action at the local or state or national level to advocate for funds following students. And so even if you're not 100% sustainable, which I would probably put out there that many of our awardees are not, how are you advocating for at a state, local, or national level for utilizing these public dollars so that the money follows the student? We still have 2 public schools last year that we awarded. So even if you know, we are sector agnostic. And so don't think that if you're not sustainable, you're not eligible. That's completely a misconception. But it's about that advocacy piece, as well as making sure that you're informing parents of the funding and the backpack funding of how much it takes to educate one of your children at your school or your business, compared to maybe what the another school district gets, and how can we make that more equitable. Transformational is our second pillar. And really, when we're thinking about transformation, we are thinking about making sure that the education that our students are receiving is different than the education we received, or different than the education our grandparents received or our parents. We should not be putting kids in rows facing front, listening to a teacher talk for 7 hours a day like that. And yet, that is the education that a lot of our students are seeing. So, how can we use new approaches, new tools, new technologies in order to revolutionize and personalize and individualize learning? When I went to Rob's school, like I did not see any textbooks, right? But kids, we were so invested in their learning. They were all doing hands-on projects and hands-on activities that were directly aligned to standards. And there was such buy-in. Kids were so into what they were learning, and they were not using those older tools. Again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with textbooks that you have to, but how can we use things, new approaches and new and revolutionary ways to make sure that our kids are not only learning what they want to learn, but learning in ways that we know is our best practices. And that directly links to outstanding. If you are doing that, you are going to have happier kids. You are going to have better adjusted kids. You are going to have better graduation rates. You're going to have better test scores. And so, for this specific principle, data is important, but the piece of data we don't prescribe. So for you, it might be graduation rate, and you might be really proud of your graduation rate, like Capital Prep Schools is, where they graduate 100% of their kids that move on to four-year colleges. For you, it might be your MAP scores if you're a private school. It might be your social emotional, metrics that you use to guide your kids, especially if you're focusing on a population, whether they're neurodiverse learners, or learners who have experienced a lot of trauma. Like maybe that social emotional piece is something that you get data on and you follow, and that's really important. So data is essential to this pillar, but the type of data that you use to figure out and proclaim your success does not matter to us. And last but not least, permissionless. We believe that education is most successful when it thrives without depending on regulatory bodies. Meaning that educators are making decisions that are best for kids right in front of them, and that leaders are supporting teachers, and leaders are also having that autonomy. So again, a lot of people might think, oh, so I'm a traditional school, public school, so I am not permissionless. But we do have Chickasaw City Schools and um, Northern Cass School District in North Dakota that are still able to operate as much in a permissionless way as they can, even though they are a traditional public school. And so this is really about putting kids first, and making sure that our schools are set up in a way where they're able to make decisions that are best for their communities. This is a brief overview of our timeline for this year. Right now, as you know, our application is open and it will close on July 15th. That is a firm and hard date, and so please make sure that you're using, the application should only take about 4 to 6 hours, but that you are getting it in by July 15th. September, our quarter finalists will be announced. That will be live, coming to you from Washington, D.C. October is the Cleveland Forbes Under 30 / Yass Prize Conference opportunity in October, where we will invite all 64 awardees to October, and then have to cut the group in half to our 32. We will take those 32 to the Yass Prize Accelerator, which I was mentioning will take place in Miami in November, the week following Thanksgiving. And then in December, back in New York City, our finalists and our winner will be revealed at a major gala and summit connected with Forbes on Fifth, as well as the Hilton Midtown in New York City. So that's a little bit about our timeline and our awards presentations for this year. So I have done a lot of talking. I am super excited to introduce Rob Levins and Dr. Troy Monroe. As I mentioned, Rob is our first inaugural $1 million Yass Prize winner, coming to you from the Discovery Center of Springfield in Springfield, Missouri. And Dr. Troy Monroe is of Jamoke Academy in Connecticut. And so I'm super excited to introduce them and to ask you all both some questions. So Rob, I'm going to start with you. You know, we're coming off of inspiring does not even really cut it. Like just a day that was filled with so much joy, so much inspiration, so much excitement to really see in person all that you are doing and why you're doing it for students. So I would love for you to share um, about that, what it was like to kind of open the doors to our Yass Prize team. And also if you could add in there, what is like one misconception that you think many people have about the Yass Prize?
Okay, yeah, that's a great one. So geez, that was 2 days ago, right? A bit of a whirlwind, it all coming together and also it happening. But surreal, like I felt that way quite a bit throughout this experience. Every single piece was exceptional and also kind of more imaginary than real, even though it was reality. Like every single thing, the accelerator was something that was crazy. And then of course, Forbes on Fifth. I never thought I'd be in Forbes on Fifth in the first place. And I definitely didn't think that I was going to have our team recognized as the inaugural Yass Prize winner at that point. And so I've had the opportunity to continue to work with the Yass Prize team and Caroline and everybody, and to finally get them in my city versus me going to the cities, the other cities. I've gone to lots of other cities with them. I've gone to other schools. I've done those things, but to have them here finally, they've seen pictures, they've seen videos, they've heard me talk about it. I've talked about it in speeches, the different things that we did. But to have them come through the very same doors where the Yass Prize journey started for us, when the healthcare workers' kids first came through the doors where they had nowhere else to take their kids to learn. And we took them through our science center doors, through that museum doors, was an incredible feeling. And to get them to finally meet the teachers, that's one of the key things for us is, happy teachers that are respected to have autonomy and do the things that they know that are best for kids, as Caroline was talking about before. To get to meet those teachers that and see where the magic is actually happening, that it meant the world to me.
It's fantastic. Yeah. And I mean, just to build on that, Dr. Monroe, you were one of our semifinalists last year. You came to Miami, you pitched, you learned about all of our cohort and continue to be such an active alumni. Would love to hear from you. Like, what is something that you maybe thought about the Yass Prize coming in, but like the Yass Prize has changed your mind about whatever that is?
Well, first of all, thank you, Caroline. And I was extremely nervous first and foremost, and didn't know much about the Yass Prize coming in. But I never thought I would be, as an educator, coming into a situation where you have folks really wanting to pour into you to build your capacity to even be in a competition such as what we're in, to support educational innovation. And so I didn't know that there were these entities out there that did this for education, for educators, to have a greater impact on your school. And so after having the experience, being involved and having all kinds of coaching and mentoring supports, I mean, you remember we had voice coaches. I mean, who gets a voice coach in education? And what is the impact of that? And learning the importance of having inflection and certain tones as you're delivering a pitch, let alone even pitching for resources to support. I mean, I thought that only happened on Shark Tank. Okay. But again, a wonderful opportunity, experiences, and collaboration with so many other bright, innovative, and creative educators from across the country. It was an incredible, rewarding experience, and it has resulted in opportunities to support our scholars moving forward.
And Dr. Monroe is mentioning Roger Love. He was one of our accelerator speakers, actually, both years. He is a voice coach, a really well known voice coach. He's coached Bradley Cooper, among other movie stars. And we bring him to our awardees, and we're actually hoping to bring him in person to Miami this year. But his talk or his keynote was the top rated talk in both years. And what he gets our alumni to think about is really that the words coming out, it's important, but it's also the way you're saying them. And so he does like one-on-one coaching, and again, it's what Dr. Monroe, you said really well, of like, I might have never had that opportunity to meet him, to learn from him, and to take something away that is then going to influence other parts of your job as an executive director, whether it's talking to a family, potential donor, a board member, right? That's like a lifelong skill. Back to you, Rob. I would love to hear, you know, you're running the science, like your discovery center, right? Like you're running it, you are fully on the ground every single day, welcoming families, working on enrollment, working on like all of the exhibits you have. Like you have zero time, probably negative time, right? There's not enough hours in the day. What would be your devil's advocate response to someone who may be sitting here thinking, I love this, I'm really excited about this, but I just don't have the time to do it?
Yeah, and really quickly, I didn't get to finish my answer with the thing that surprised me or misconception piece, and I did want to address that because I even saw a question about this in the chat. It's not a political prize. This is something that people have brought up because when you talk about doing things differently in a school, and it depends on which state you're in. Sometimes they think it's the Democrats, sometimes they think it's the Republicans, and it's an independent thing. So we talked about this at the dinner when you came just recently. It's about kids first and foremost. It is not about, and I know politics often co-opt things, right? But this is truly about how do we get kids educated and keep them wanting to learn for the rest of their lives and take care of them socially, emotionally. All those pieces, and do it in a way that's different. So I wanted to talk about that piece too, and then I can answer the other question too. I just wanted to address that. And what was the second question? Sorry.
Yeah, no. So, what would you say to people who don't think they have time for an
Yeah.
application or don't have time to come and be with us in Florida for the accelerator, those types of misconceptions?
Yeah, so make time. But also the reason why you should make time, I mean, it's a no-brainer. You absolutely should make time. There was a question of whether we should even apply for a grant for $1 million because there's no way we could possibly win it. Like we almost didn't even apply, and then we won it. So like we didn't have our priorities set straight. If you want to do great things for your kids, then you have to take the time to do great things. And this is the most important thing you could be doing for your organization. And you just have to prioritize it. It's the 80-20 rule. If you don't, you'll never know what could have been possible. You'll never know what your students are going to miss out on because you took more time to talk about a school lunch menu than to fill out an application. There is time in the day. You just have to select those things that, you know what, is this really going to move us 80% ahead right now? If we talk through the minutia of what are the decorations going to be for our spring event, table that, say like, hey, that's important, but not right now. I'm going to get the most important thing done first, and that is completing your application.
And in completing your application, you get access to two things automatically, even if you don't move on to the quarterfinalist round. One is you get invited into our community, which is a virtual community. It's called the Yass Prize Movement Platform. And it's basically a private LinkedIn for our awardees and for our applicants as well. So you could have a conversation with Rob on there or Dr. Monroe on there, like in the private chat feature. You could look at the map and say, oh, I'm going to visit Connecticut or I'm going to visit Illinois and I want to see who's around there. Or, oh, maybe I want to think about AI and technology and talk to an expert in our community. And I'm going to find that person, like filter, and you can look through our directory. And so that is open to anyone who submits their application. The second part that you get access to is attending our virtual accelerator, which is 3 weeks leading up to Thanksgiving. And the Miami portion is only for our 32. However, the 3 weeks leading up is speakers like Roger Love, who I just mentioned, Randall Lane of the editor-in-chief of Forbes. We had a wonderful woman, Mandela, who's in VR and in finance, and just like has wonderful stories and wonderful things to share. And those are all virtual on Zoom, open to all applicants who submit their application. So you get a lot, not, just by applying and putting that 4 to 6 hours in. Back to you, Dr. Monroe. Which of the STOP principles is one that really kind of inspires you or motivates you, or have you been thinking differently about now that you've joined our community?
Yeah, I think the permissionless continues to resonate with me and with my colleague that attended along with me. I remember having a in-depth conversation about being permissionless with Jeannie, and we are conditioned to think differently in education. Again, very quick side note, as a former traditional educational leader and now in the charter world for the last 10 years, things are different. For me, in the traditional world, you had to get all the permissions, right? You had to dot all the I's, cross all the T's. I'm not saying you don't have to do that in the charter world. However, your thinking, your thinking has to be different. We now have been taught to think differently, to expect to be different. It's okay to do and be different. It's okay to take the lead on something. It's okay not to wait for someone to come down and save your school. It's okay to go out and find collaborative partners in the Yass network, external to the Yass network. And that's what we've done at Jamoke Academy. And it's been a wonderful ride thus far as we continue to work on our project. But that's been the principle that's resonated the most with us. And I felt really energized and like we were in control of our own destiny, so to speak, with a powerful network of collaborating partners within from the Yass network.
Rob, can you talk a little bit about the collaborations, right? Like you were transformative and outstanding and like all of these principles, which is why you were a $1 million winner the first year. But then since you've been collaborating with other people in the community in order to make what you're doing even better for your students, and building on other people's strengths, kind of like what Dr. Monroe is saying, to make what you're offering kids even stronger. Can you talk to like 1 or 2 collaborations that you're excited about?
Yeah, absolutely. First, Troy, I loved your comment about permissionless. I just need to point out how awesome that word is. I use it all the time now. It's definitely my spirit animal. So I hear you on that one. They're all great, but that one's fun. So some of the partnerships, one of the cool things, I got to visit Care Elementary in Miami, and to see what Christopher's doing there in person. And I actually got to go to one of his weekly school assemblies, and that name does not give it justice. I think he probably has a better name for it, but I can't remember what it's called, because it was like a celebration. The kids were dancing, they were enthused, they were excited to be there, and he used that, got them interested in doing something, and then used that to get their energy right for the classroom, going back to that, or pointing out exceptional classes. They got a class of the week. All these different things. I videoed as much of it as I could, and I've been talking to him about it. And we actually implemented a similar thing here. And it's different, like he's got a different school, and so we do it a bit differently, and it's not as good as it needs to be. But part of it was just saying like, okay, we just have to start on it, because what these kids are getting, he told me how hard it was for him to start it. And so we jumped in. They're like, it's not perfect, I don't want to do it. And I'm like, nope, we're doing it. It's going to be bad the first day, but we're going to have it great one day. So it's that whole iterative process. But now we're doing those school assemblies, and I can't wait to one day have Christopher come here and see ours. And hopefully it's as exceptional as his is one day, because it really is truly an experience. We're working with a one of the finalists from last year, Rock by Rock, or 2 years ago, sorry. It's been a whirlwind. I already said that, right? But Rock by Rock, we actually started applying for an NSF grant with them. There's a lot of, they do project-based learning in a box sort of thing. And so we do a lot of that same kind of stuff and seeing how we can work together to create something even better for kids. I think that's the connectivity piece. When you get into a room or a Zoom room with people who just want to help kids and they want to do the best for them, and they have that permissionless piece that Dr. Monroe talked about earlier, they're not going to stop. They're going to jump in and help you because they don't care. They understand that they're all our kids. And so Dr. Monroe's kids are my kids too. And so if he needs help with something and I have a resource or I have time to talk to him, I will. And that's how this community works. And so that's how we've all been kind of working together on different things here and there, maybe casual advice. I know that I need to reach out to you after this, Dr. Monroe, about connecting you with a colleague here in Springfield that needs to talk to somebody who is in a traditional-ish public school setting and now is in a private school setting or charter school, different setting. So always making those connections, and they always bear fruit.
And historically, we stay in our silos, right? Which is not necessarily good for kids or good for leaders, but charter schools go to charter school conferences and private schools have their private school associations, and traditional public schools, meet with other traditional public school leaders. And then you're only staying within your own little world. And what the Yass Prize does is break everyone out of those worlds because there are so much more in common. Those leaders have so much more in common than they ever realized. And that's when we see collaborations. That's when we see redefining and even reimagining like what your school could turn into or transform into in the next 5-10 years. So thank you both for sharing that. Okay, I do want to be able to get to some audience questions, but before I do that, one more question for each of you. Dr. Monroe, in the application, and having read many, many, many applications the past 2 years, a lot of leaders or applicants tend to just put everything out that they're doing. We're doing this thing with technology. We're doing this field trip thing. We're doing this thing for teachers. We're doing like all of the things, right? What would be your advice to actually related to concision and related to telling your story? What would be your advice related to applicants?
Yeah, my advice would be you really have to step back from it. If you haven't done that, you might want to take a quick needs assessment of what's going on in your district. We had already done that. So we were a little bit ahead of the game. So we knew where the challenge areas were in our district and what we wanted to achieve, what we wanted to improve upon. And we had tons of strategies around tons of issues in our district. And in doing so, we were able to narrow the scope. And I said to my team, I said, listen, we can't accomplish everything. Pick 1 or 2 items to focus on, and then we can build from there. And so very quickly, I would say to you that we are well aware of the impact of having lack of certified teachers in classrooms, the impact on children. And for our scholars, we had to turn scholars away that were on a waiting list for us because we didn't have teachers. Right? We needed more certified teachers, and we could not address those particular babies that we had to turn away. So we decided to focus on how do we cultivate and grow our own. And as a result, we ended up creating an opportunity called Growing Our Own Pathways to Teacher Certification, where we focus on taking our academic assistants and supporting their ability to not only complete their degree obtainment, but also become certified teachers so that we won't be in a situation where we have to turn any child away from being in our classroom. So that was born out of the needs assessment, and then it came to fruition with the support from the Yass organization.
And that's so important, right? There are so many gaps. We were just talking to, Rob and Oakmont about this as well. There are so many gaps in our in careers, like, or in, where there's not enough teachers, there's not enough plumbers, there's not enough people in the trades, right? So if you're a school or organization that is cultivating, whether it's like grow your own with your teachers or cultivating people or cultivating your students so that they're learning specific trades, they're earning a culinary degree while they're in high school, or they're earning like their initial like nursing certification or some requirements in high school. Like those are all things that just are so important right now. Again, if you're not doing that and that's not your thing, that it doesn't mean that you're not eligible. But that's one connection piece that we're seeing in a lot of applicants and a lot of really transformative schools. Rob, what would be your advice for telling your story in a concise way?
Yeah, so it's tricky doing it in a long way or a concise way, but the story piece, you really want to connect with good metrics. I think that was really important. A lot of people in the applications I read last year had a hard time saying how they were outstanding in a way that was understandable for us as judges, because maybe what you're doing is done elsewhere in the country. I read several applications of these things that were doing the exact same things. Just how do you measure winning? What are the rules for winning with your students? And then tell us what your rules are and how they've won. What's the scoreboard at your school? I think that would really help your application if you're able to share a scoreboard story about that outstanding piece. I think that could be really important. And then, have a friend, colleague, look it over. I think that's really the best advice that you can get, is to get a well-respected peer of yours that would take a second to look over it and ask the same questions, because you're going to be judged first by your peers. So why not go ahead and take a first stab at getting a peer to review it and tell you, like, you know what, I don't really understand how you're permissionless. Like, that doesn't really fit the criteria. Can you explain this more for me? They'll ask those questions before you even turn it in, so that a judge later isn't going, how does this work? I'm not really seeing this connected to the question. Yeah, just have an extra set of eyes, I'd say, too.
So important, right? Make sure that your message is what you intend your message to be. Wonderful. Well, Josephine has been answering, and I say Rob has jumped in there a little bit too, answering some of the questions. I'm going to go through a couple of them. Just again, some misconceptions. Want to make sure we're all on the same page. So a lot of people often ask about eligibility. Am I eligible? So it's a little bit more complicated than this, but I'm going to pare it down to hopefully make it really easy for you. If you serve anyone from pre-K to 12, doesn't need to be all the grades, but if you serve some span of that grade level in the United States and you've already started serving students, meaning you're not opening up, later this year or next year, for the most part, you are probably 99% eligible to apply. There's a couple other, parts in the eligibility quiz. That's the first part of the application, but those are the biggest, like, basic foundational components. In terms of learning more, we have webinars every 2 weeks where they are on different topics. So one will just dive into the accelerator. One will just dive into like our Forbes partnership. One will dive into some of our judging and how that works. And on each webinar, you'll meet with different alumni. So today you had you got to meet Rob and Dr. Monroe, but then if you come to all 8 webinars, you'll meet many, many other alumni. And so even if you're not able to attend live, we'll always send out the recording following. So I would encourage you to sign up for those subsequent webinars. I also have office hours every Friday at 12 o'clock Eastern time. And that's just visiting yassprize.org/office hours. If you type that in at 12 p.m. In a Google search, that will bring you right to my Zoom. And that's an informal way to drop in and get a specific question answered that might have not been already answered. Someone's asking about financials. Oh, that one went away. Okay, so I'm assuming Josephine answered that. Thank you. A couple of people are asking about like curriculum pieces. So if you look at our past awardees, many of our awardees are like serving students from 8 to 3 or whatever their school day looks like. So many of our awardees are that core instruction versus supplemental or mentoring or solely focusing on like teacher development. It's not that those are not important, because we believe they are. It's not that you're not eligible, you might be, but our mission of our foundation and the Yass Prize is to really focus on the crux of the school day and that core direct instructional content. And Janine Yass says it best, where a student in second grade shouldn't have to sit through a really poor school day where they're not getting engaging content and then have to make up all that they missed or all that they're lacking from 3 to 6 p.m. in tutoring or in a mentorship program. So again, it's not that we don't believe that supplemental is important, because we do believe it has a time and a place, but the mission is really focusing on that core piece. We have, though, awarded, an ed tech app that is partnering with, related to financial literacy, or Rock by Rock, what Rob mentioned, who does like a really awesome hands-on curriculum, especially for homeschool families who need really engaging content. So it's not that we haven't, it's just it's not the bulk of our awardees. Okay. I think that's all of our questions. However, you still have many weeks left. I would encourage you to get your application in early. We do, notice the ones that come in early, and so it's not something that's required. Obviously, you have until July 15th, but please do not wait until the summer and right around July 4th to work on this, especially if you all are already taking the first steps to join a webinar to learn more. And then please visit our subsequent webinars and our Alphas hours tomorrow, coming to you live at noon Eastern time, if you have any follow-up questions. I want to thank Josephina for all of her support and help in answering the questions many of you had in the Q&A. Dr. Monroe, thank you for all that you're doing, not only for your students, but for the future generation of teachers, and the future idea of like what teacher certification and teacher prep should look like. So thank you so much for supporting your students and your teachers. And Mr. Blevins, thank you so much for inviting us to Discovery Center on Tuesday. It was so great to be there. And if you follow us on social, we have many videos and photos coming to you, because really seeing inside Rob's school and Science Center is something that every community science center should transform into. So be on the lookout, because you're going to love seeing his photos and his videos, especially now that you've met him. So thank you all so much for your time. We will be in touch. I'm at info@yassprize.org if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Dr. Monroe. And we'll see everyone soon.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank
Take care.
you. Bye, everyone.